Coming up on this episode of Radio.co.
I was at Magic for 3.5 years, but I weared myself down to the ground because I'd be DJing till like 2, 3 in the morning on the weekends, but then I'd have to be up at work at 5 a.m. in the morning to produce a breakfast show Monday to Friday.
Hello and welcome back to the Radio.co podcast. Today I'm absolutely thrilled because we've got Kaylee Golding joining us today. Kaylee Golding is only 24, but she's got shows on Kiss Fresh, she's got a show on Hits, Radio Pride, and she's got a show on Represent FM. She's also a co-founder of the Radio Silence movement, as well as the founder of the On Your Gaydio platform and podcast. So I'm thrilled to have you on board with us today, Kaylee, and be chatting with you today. Let's get into it. I think personally, just from kind of what I've just said just now, and knowing that also you make time you host discussions, you also do events. You've got to be like the hardest working girl in broadcasting, surely.
Thank you.
It's just non-stop. Where do you get the time?
Where do I get the time? To be fair, it's kind of just like working out my schedule and doing a little bit of everything while I can. Like right now, this is probably like the least busiest I've ever been in my life, because obviously before I was a producer for the Magic Breakfast show, so I only just left that in July, as well as doing everything else that I was doing. And now I'm like, I don't know how I did that. So now I feel like I've got loads of time on my hands, but it's just being flexible and working around your schedule and just doing a little bit each day. That's what I think is important. When you work across loads of different things, it's just saying, okay, I'll do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And it's all a journey. And I think if I didn't love it so much, I have no idea how I'd be able to do it.
Yeah, it's that youthful energy as well. There's a lot you can do. So for those that don't know a bit about your story, Kaylee, let's just reel back and let's just tell our listeners how you got into the radio industry. Did you feel, I know you kind of followed a bit of maybe a traditional route in the sense you've done a bit of community radio, you've done student radio, but yeah, just take it back and tell everyone a quick story of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, of course. So it was quite a traditional route. So I originally wanted to be a producer. I didn't want to be a presenter. So I studied radio in Birmingham at college. I was involved in different radio projects around Birmingham, like Music Potential, Base FM. These were just little projects that were going on to kind of an insight into radio, and I really enjoyed radio production. And I think that's because I was too shy to be a presenter. Like I was like, me a presenter? No, I can't do that. No way. So I was like production. And then I naturally followed the academic, like educational route of, okay, so I studied radio at college. Now I'm going to go to university to study radio. And that's where I moved to London. And with student radio, there wasn't many people at my university that was into the kind of music that I was into. So for me to kind of do the show that I wanted to do, I had to present the show as well as produce it. So that's how I started kind of picking up the presenting. And I really, really enjoyed it. I luckily won some student radio awards for it. So I was like, oh, wait, maybe I really can be a presenter. I did community radio. Again, I went in there as a producer, interning, developed into head of production at the Beat London. And then when the student radio show was picking up, I was like, oh, maybe I should also try community radio as well as a presenter. So I started to present my own show there. So during this time, I was kind of like, production, presenting. What am I going to do? Maybe I'll just do both. So I felt really, really like in a kind of confused and conflicted energy in that moment. But you can do both. Like, honestly, anyone listening, if you want to be a producer, you want to be a presenter, you want to do both, just do whatever it is that you want to do. So then after winning the Student Radio Awards, I was allowed to present a show on Radio 1, because from that moment, like, we were scouted to do the shows on Radio 1 for the Christmas search. So that was like insane to me. That was so exciting. And from that point, I was like, okay, I'm going to actually try this whole presenting thing. Like, I'm going to actually really go for it. So I started sending demos out to different people and was just really trying to push myself as a presenter and also as a DJ as well. And then if we fast forward, then I moved from the Beat London to Represent, mainly just because I moved home. So I live now closer to Represent. Started to continue to do my show there, continued to experience there. And then again, carried on sending demos, got to do cover on BBC One Extra. That was incredible. And then still continued to send demos to more different places, like, come on, guys, pick me up, please. And then I got offered my show on Kiss Fresh, which was incredible. And then since there, continued on Kiss Fresh. I still do my shows on community radio just because I love community radio. It has such a place in my heart that until I physically have to leave community radio, I'm not going to leave it. And then I was offered a show on Hits Radio Pride. So now that's where I am. That's the kind of condensed version of my life for the past 10 years.
Amazing. Well, it's definitely well deserved, to be honest. I love listening to your shows. So you mentioned briefly that you still do your show in Represent, which is obviously, for those people that don't know, it's a youth radio station in Brixton, but it's also like kind of one of the most important independent radio stations UK has, I would say, at the moment. So with your experience now, you must meet, especially at Represent, you must meet a lot of obviously young people that are working in radio, they're getting involved in the industry. Do you think your journey is quite common, and if not, perhaps how are other young people getting into the industry and working in radio?
I definitely think that my route into radio is very common. A lot of people do come from the student radio, community radio background, so that was normal for me. Obviously, the move from Birmingham was a big step for me, and quite a lot of people from outside of London have had to make that move as well. So that's quite common. But I think where my journey was a little bit different was that I experimented with lots of different radio stations and doing lots of different things and my own content online. And I think what a lot of people do is they go to community radio, they have a show once a week and they leave it at that. And that's amazing. But look how many other people across the country have a community radio show once a week. Like, it's not enough. So for me, what was really important was for me to do the things like Radio Silence, for me to do the things like On Your Gaydar, for me to do like the polls that I do on my Instagram story. So I can really develop who Kaylee is and what I find important, the things that I find important. So when I am stepping into these stations like Kiss Fresh or Hits Radio Pride, they know exactly what they're getting from me, because I've really developed putting out content that really matters to me. So I think that that's the most important thing. But I do get to meet so many other incredible young people that are just doing their thing. And the talent out there at the moment is absolutely insane. I'm so excited for the future of radio.
So with that, do you think that taking on all these different kind of other experiences and taking these opportunities, do you think that you've really refined your interests of what you kind of want to do in broadcasting? Like, you really have, do you think you've got like a clear vision of this is what I want to do, rather than be like, oh, I'm kind of up for everything?
Yeah, 1,000%, like 100%. Because in the sense of that now, again, the stations are like, they know what they're going to get from me, and I know the spin that I would want to put on things as well. So I think a lot of the time, like, I am down to try and do lots of different things, but I'll do them in my way. I'll do them in a way that fits me as a presenter, because I'm not your traditional presenter at all. Like, I just about speak. I just about can put words together. I stutter all the bloody time. I'm not that handle the business kind of presenter. I'm the good vibes, let's just go wild and see what happens kind of presenter. And I feel like that's a new influx of talent that's coming up as well. Whereas before, it'd be like, have that perfect voiceover voice, do this, do that. And that's not what I see as a presenter anymore. I just see it as someone that can carry a good vibe and a good energy, hold a conversation and make the listener or viewer feel good or feel whatever emotion it is that you're trying to get across.
I definitely agree with that. When I listen to your shows, I think you're definitely a good vibes presenter and stuff, and it's really refreshing to hear somebody that on the radio that, as you say, isn't speaking in that particular way of speaking that we can associate with, like, you know, very kind of old school, almost like commercial radio show, like, you know, like, oh, drive time, that kind of. I'm not doing a good impression, but I'm sure
exactly
you can imagine what I'm referring to.
Exactly what you're referring to. You got it.
And it's refreshing to. Yeah, and it's refreshing to hear someone that like just has a brilliant way of communicating with people, but is now just sounds like an ordinary kind of person in the best way. But I also think with you have like a you're very like warm, and you're very kind of easy for guests to talk to, and you have a great personality. But you can also talk about the more serious topics and stuff, as well as obviously you do on like your Radio Silence podcast, and you're not scared to kind of, talk about stuff with real depth and stuff as well. So do you find it very easy just to be able to do both of those? And do you ever think that some aspiring presenters can feel a bit kind of that they're boxed in with either being perhaps too serious, or too kind of like, like good vibes, not serious? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, I know 100% what you mean. And again, it just goes back to putting out content and working on content on things that really matter to you and things that are important to you. And that's why I can easily do content about young people, about the LGBTQ plus community, about equality, because these are all topics that really matter to me. So it's still authentic to who Kaylee Golding is, because I care about these issues, and the issues that I'll talk about, whether it's on air or whether it's just with my friends at home or with my family. These are issues that really matters to me. And I think what I had to learn with myself as well is that, and what I think the industry just needs to learn, is that it's okay to talk about important issues and it not be sad and it not be like we're going to cry. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'll talk about mental health on my show and we'll be smiling and we'll be happy, because of it hasn't got to feel like oh my gosh, okay, let's bring everything down now to talk about these issues, because that's not what it is. If you're to speak about your friends about certain things, you're not in absolute tears when you're talking about it. Do you know what I mean? You're just on a normal level, and sometimes it might dip down, sometimes it might dip up. So I think it's kind of me learning the way that I like to present and the way that I like to talk about things and talk about serious issues is in a way that you're not going to feel really upset and depressed when you're listening to it. And that's just because that's the kind of person that I am. So it's about feeling comfortable within yourself and feeling comfortable in the content that you're going to put out. And yeah, it can take time to do, but again, it's just naturally the kind of person that I am. And it's also okay if you're not naturally that kind of person. If you are a more serious presenter when talking about hard issues, then that's who you are and that's your niche, and you can't try and be anyone else that you're not at the end of the day.
Yeah, so it's just about being true to yourself and knowing who you are and not questioning it.
1,000%.
Do you think have you experienced much pressure to change yourself in the radio industry? So if we go back, what was your first paid job in the radio industry?
My first,
so I know you did like volunteering here and there, but what was the first paid job?
So my first paid job as a producer was at the Beat London, so that was a community station. Right. And my first paid job as a presenter was, I think it was the cover shows on One Extra. I think I'm not 100%. Nice. Either the cover shows on One Extra or I did interviews for Gaydio over Pride Month. So it was either one of those. I can't remember the exact timings, but it was one of those.
Sorry, I'll change my question slightly, and we'll come back to that one. I'm going to change it to, what was the radio industry like when you first did your kind of first paid job? So like when you were the producer at the Beat London, what was the radio industry like then? So how many years ago was that now?
So I was 18, so that was about 6 years ago now.
So 6 years ago, how do you remember the radio industry being when you first started getting paid for your work?
It was very undiverse, I would say. There wasn't many people that I felt looked and sounded like me at all. And yeah, it just wasn't... Everything felt very niche, like in the sense of that I didn't even consider like Kiss or Capital or Radio 1. I didn't consider any of those because it just wasn't me. I didn't even consider like Gaydio or any stations like that because I just didn't see myself on there. At that point, the only station that I really was desperate to be on was One Extra. And that is because there was people that looked like me. There was people from up north. Like at the time, I don't think there was anyone from Birmingham on the station, but there was people from up north. And so it was kind of like that was the only station that I could hear and see myself. So I was obsessed with One Extra. Like I was so obsessed. And now things are changing in each station. So when I see myself and I see other presenters, it's not just one extra fly in the flag for voices that are different and people that look different to what traditionally was on radio, which was like the very posh voices, people that were white only. And then even if there was someone of colour, it'd be someone from London. Like this whole traditional look of and sound of what radio was, we was really there. But I feel like things have completely changed throughout lockdown. Like the whole industry's just completely changed.
How do you think young people have changed that the radio industry in that way? So I think like presenters such as yourself and the fact you've got young people that are kind of creating their own content for their own communities and stuff, and they're kind of showing to broadcasters, oh look, I've got an audience, you know, I've got people that kind of want to listen to me or want to watch me and stuff like that. I think that can kind of change radio stations from like the inside, because now it's not a case of like, oh, you up there in your ivory tower thinking you know what people want to listen to. You might be clueless. Like if you want to speak to like the younger generations, you're going to have to get younger people in, and they're going to be able to actually produce kind of radio shows that people want to listen to and stuff. But in your experience, how do you think young people are changing the radio industry? Is it, like I just said, in the sense they're being themselves and just proving they can do it without someone giving them permission, or what do you reckon?
That's exactly what it is. Like that is 100% what it is. And that's why I think social media is so important for content creators. Like as I continuously keep saying, like create the content that matters to you, that you would want to see yourself doing on the big stations, on the TV channels, or on the online platforms. Like just create that content, because of when they see you already have an audience for it, that's when they will be intrigued by it. And for me, like I'm so blessed, because when I joined Kiss Fresh and I was like, oh my gosh, does this mean I'm gonna have to leave community radio? And Rebecca, big up Rebecca who runs Kiss, she was just like, no, because if the reason why we love you because you're so connected to these communities, why would we take you out of these communities? And it's like 100% like why would I leave these communities? Because at the end of the day, it's not helpful for Kiss, it's not helpful for Represent. And the way that we could do is kind of say, oh okay, like here's Kaylee on Represent, that's part of the Black community, that puts out content for the Black community, and I continue to develop myself. But then you can also listen to me on Kiss as well, and it's kind of like a cross section of easing my audience into Kiss as well as me still having an area and a place to develop that I can call home, like Represent. So I think that that's exactly what it is, and it's you being confident in yourself. So when you are stepping into these buildings, you stay consistent and you stay to who you are as a presenter and as a content creator, and even as a producer as well. It's not just the people like in front of the mic, it's also the people behind it, like production staff. When you're stepping into these buildings, like be true to the producer that you are, be true to the content that you believe should be made.
So with you, you know, obviously you're saying there that you carried on when you got the Kiss job, you carried on at Represent and stuff. So is it hard to switch between different radio stations and stuff, or do you just find it easy to kind of go from one to the other and stuff? Do you ever like say, oh, you're listening to Kiss Fresh when you're on hits, or
I have definitely done that.
Or anything like that?
I have definitely done that, and it was the worst thing ever. But no, I have definitely done that. But what's really good is that each station has its own niche. Like I'm doing something different on each station. So like Kiss Fresh, the show is a weekend show. It's all about brand new music. That is what it's about. Represent, I'll have guests on. I'll do more like wacky daytime kind of things because there's more space to do that on Represent, with it being a community station. Then on Hits Radio Pride, it's more like commercial gay icons. I'm talking about like LGBTQ plus content. And then even when I do the show on No Signal, that's all about celebrating Black music from the Midlands. So even though there's some things that might cross over, if I'm talking about just things that are going on in my life, but essentially each one has its own separate thing, so the content isn't actually the same. And that's very helpful, because if I was basically doing the exact same show, like it would be really difficult, because I'm on radio every single day. So I have to really be able to differentiate from each station.
What have you learned from going to so many different radio stations? So do you think are all radio stations like very different, or is some stuff you kind of is the same across the board. What's the experience been like, essentially, of like working at so many different radio stations? Obviously, you had your volunteering and stuff before and whatnot as well.
Do you know what? It's not much difference. Like, I feel like you would think that it's loads of difference when really you're just bringing yourself. Do you know what I mean? The only thing that's really different is maybe the music and maybe a bit of software. But essentially, it's still just me talking in between songs. Do you know what I mean? So it's not that much difference. Obviously, each one has different guidelines to it. But again, no, it's not. You'd think that it's more different than what it is, to be honest.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you're enjoying this episode, then why not subscribe to our newsletter? You can get some tips, tricks, and general radio expertise direct to your inbox. Also, if you'd like to start a radio station, then you can try us for free for 7 days if you go over to Radio.co. Yeah, we talked a bit about your journey and stuff in your career and how young people are changing the radio industry and stuff. But what are the challenges that you faced so far, and what challenges do you think some young people, or people just, not just young people, but people starting their careers in radio, what do you think they're still facing?
So one of the biggest challenges for me was building up the confidence to be a presenter, and also I feel like I naturally put myself in a box because of the lack of diversity. So I think I wasn't really open to exploring different stations, whereas now I am, and now like I'm thriving. I'm loving the life that I'm living at the moment. So I think for me at the beginning, I was very much like I'm only going to listen to these stations. I only want to be on these stations. Whereas now I look at places, and if they don't have someone like me, then that's actually better, because then I can be like, oh, look what I can bring to your station, something that you don't already have. Here's a plot twist for you. So so that was definitely something that I struggled with. And again, because of that, I had a lot of insecurities as a presenter. Like, even I think all presenters have it, every person, not even just presenters, every person have it. Everyone's like, oh, am I good enough? Am I this? Am I that? So I did go through moments that I really just didn't think that I'd be good enough. And I think that's something that everyone goes through. In terms of people struggling now, I think that there is so much talent out there. And because of social media, like, everyone wants to be a presenter now because the options there. Everyone wants to be a content creator. But again, as long as you just find out what it is that you're good at and what you enjoy, and you really just master your craft, you'll be absolutely fine. Because the thing is, there are so many jobs out there. Like, there are so many jobs out there. Like, and yeah, if we look at just radio, you can think, okay, it's kind of limited. There's not like hundreds and hundreds of radio jobs out there, but there is quite a few. Like, there is a lot of radio stations out there. And then you also look at then TV, online presenting as well, like hosting, DJing. Like, there's so many jobs out there. So even if you look and you think, oh my gosh, like, there's so many up and coming presenters, just don't let it throw you, because we all can have jobs in the industry and we all can thrive.
Yeah, that's good advice, to be fair. And I guess it's like not letting yourself be put off before you try, isn't it? And having that, faking your confidence until you've naturally got it anyway.
Oh, 1,000%.
I've listened to some of the stuff you've said before about how obviously you've got kind of developed a bit of like almost like your own brand, and you know what you like to kind of talk about, like the LGBTQ community. You talk about you like black music. You talk about being from Brum, like that's part of your brand and stuff. But what advice would you give to someone who thinks that their tastes or their passions, the things they care about, are not really like on trend at the moment, like, or that there isn't space for, that kind of stuff? Because I think, like, even just from being from Brum, like, you get a lot of slack and people mimic the accent, and it's not something that's necessarily seen as like a really popular thing or so. And you have to work hard against like stereotypes or negative press and stuff. So like, yeah, what advice do you have for people that think like, oh, I'm not sure my thing is what people are looking for at the moment?
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether it's on trend, because one thing about trends is that they come and they go. So if you're trying to jump on the trend that's happening right now, you're already too late to be joining that trend, because of like everyone's going to be over it very soon. So, and even me, like, the whole girl from Brum, favourite girl from Brum thing, it's not even just about being from Birmingham. I love being from Birmingham, of course, but it's about celebrating who you are and where you come from. So that in any conversation that I like to have, if someone's from a different place, like, what does it mean to be where you're from? Do you know what I mean? What does it mean to be part of your culture? It's about being, just celebrating where it is that you come from. So I think that when you look at that, it's a deeper message within that, because everyone could look at that and be like, oh, Birmingham, yawn. And the same way that if I'm on a radio station and I'm just talking about Birmingham all the time, everyone's not going to really connect to that because not everyone's from Birmingham. So again, I can't go super Brum every single time that I'm on every single station. It wouldn't work. But what it is about celebrating where you are from. So it's just a bigger picture of it all. And again, it's looking at all these different things that make you a little bit different, or things that you want to celebrate. And that is what will make you different to the other presenters. That is what will make you stand out. Do you know what I mean? Because again, I know that now a lot of people, if they're looking for talent from Birmingham, my name has to be in the conversation. Do you know what I mean? And not even just Birmingham. If they're looking for talent outside of London, my name has to be in the conversation, because I make it so obvious that I'm not just like a normal London presenter. Do you know what I mean? So it's just having faith in yourself and bigging up yourself and just believing in yourself. Because even for me to be like, oh yeah, I'm your favourite girl from Brum, like, that's cocky. Of course I'm not everyone's favourite girl from Birmingham. Do you know what I mean? Like, people have mums there, people have girlfriends there. I can't be their favourite. But it's just the confidence of, I will make you believe it. Yeah, you can't beat the mums, but I'll make you believe it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, like that. Love that. We've kind of spoke briefly about this, but yeah, you do a lot of stuff. So like, as well as all the radio and the podcast stuff as well, which is amazing. You were recently like with the other KISS presenters at the Radio Academy event, The Power of Audio. I saw that you hosted that discussion for like the Rio Ferdinand Foundation and stuff. You're a hardworking gal. So what makes you accept or decline an opportunity? Because I feel like some people starting their careers can get presented with mixed messages, in the sense that on one hand, people give them the advice in which they're like, you should say yes to every opportunity. On the other hand, they say, oh, you've got to protect your energy and be careful what you give your time and energy to. So what determines if you say yes or no to an opportunity yourself?
Do you know what? That's such a good point, because when I joined my management company, because obviously now luckily I have an amazing management team, and the first thing they said to me is, sometimes it's not about what you say yes to, it's about what you say no to. And I was like, huh? You say no to things? Is that a thing? Luckily, like, I haven't really said no to that many things. But again, I think that's mainly because I'm so obvious about the things that it is that I want to do, and the things that I talk about and the things that matter to me, is that people can really tell whether it would suit their brand or not, whether it would make sense for me. And people don't even like really approach me with BS, because they know what my interests are, and if it doesn't fit it, then why are you coming to me for? So luckily I don't really get asked to do too much stuff. But I think one message that I wish that I learned early on is that it is okay to say no. And it's okay to say no to free work, and it's okay to just not overwork yourself. Because I worked so much, and even now, like, I don't stop. Like, I actually don't stop. But before, I don't know how on earth I managed to even survive, because I was just so busy working all the time. I would not say no to anything. I'd absolutely run myself down to the ground. And I wish that I was just told, or I just told myself, do you know what? It's okay to take that day off, or it's okay to go and see your family instead of doing this radio job that you're not even being paid for. Like, I would always have to say yes to absolutely everything. And half of me is like, okay, look, you're living your dream now. So maybe it was a good idea that you absolutely bring yourself down to the ground. But then half of me is like, some things I could have just said no to. It wouldn't have been the end of the world if I didn't go. Whereas I really upset myself on some days that I was so tired that I wish that I did just say no. So I think that it is important sometimes to really say, okay, wait, no. You don't have to do everything. And even like me, working the job at Magic, I was at Magic for 3.5 years. Luckily, half of that was lockdown, but I worked myself down to the ground, because I'd be DJing till like 2-3 in the morning on the weekends, but then I'd have to be up at work at 5 a.m. in the morning to produce a breakfast show Monday to Friday. So I don't know how on earth I did that, but now I really notice the difference, and so does everyone else that are booking me, because I have so much more energy to give to these bookings. I have so much more time and energy. So I think sometimes you just have to take that leap and say, do you know what? It's all right. I'll take a pay. I won't get paid. Like, I'll quit my day job and I'm just going to have faith. And luckily it's worked out for me, and like financially I'm completely sweet. But it was a risk. It is a big risk to take to say I'm going to quit my day job. But if I didn't, like, I wasn't being the best presenter and DJ that I could be. I was absolutely shattered. I was tired. I don't know how I did it. So I think, yeah, it is important to make sure that you are looking after yourself. Otherwise you just won't be doing a good job anyway.
Do you find it hard now? Are you much better at saying no to stuff now?
Yeah, I am. Like, I think I am now, because now I can generally just say like, I just don't have the time. Like it's just as simple as saying.
But that must be true as well.
Yeah, no, it is. But I'll just say, like, I apologise.
Genuinely do not have the time.
Exactly. Like I'm sorry, I can't take any more work on, or I'm already booked that day. And if you're busy, then you're busy. And also as well, I've learned to include like family stuff within that, and friend stuff. Like, if I know it's a friend's birthday, or I know it's a family member's birthday, or something's going on, before I'd be like, oh, I'll make it work. I'll do both. I'll make it work. Whereas now I was just like, oh, sorry, I can't do that day. And it took a while for me to be like that. But now, yeah, because I want to spend time with my family, like, and that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you made a great point though about how, you know, obviously giving yourself that rest and actually seeing your family and friends makes you better at whatever you're doing with your, you know, with your life or so, with whatever career you're in. Obviously, some of those kind of other opportunities you take on, and even just like with your Represent show and stuff as well, so much of it gets kind of put up on YouTube, and there's a video element to a lot of the stuff you do. You go out for certain radio stations and, you know, you ask people questions at like wireless or all that kind of stuff. So do you think there's space for people that only want that don't want any part in the video element of like radio now? Or do you think like they've got to kind of get used to it because that's where it's going?
I think you have to get used to it. That's where it's going. That is 100% where it's going.
You reckon?
And I also just think for yourself, if you are an up-and-coming presenter, like, why wouldn't you want to do the visual side of it? Because I just think that it just makes sense. Do you know what I mean? If that's the direction that the industry's heading into, why would you fight against it? And it's a good way to like use social media to get stuff out, because it's more than just being a radio presenter now. So I think that you just have to roll with it. You have to do it.
Yeah, and it's how people are going to kind of discover you, and it's not just, you know, because less, apparently, according to certain statistics or so, less people are kind of, young people are listening to radio in the kind of traditional ways or so, but they are going to kind of see you on various social media sites or whatever, and that most of that involves having a video element. So I guess it's probably a bit pivotal to your success and actually having the video side of it as well.
Exactly.
Are you like completely comfortable have you always felt comfortable being in front of the camera as well as behind the mic?
Oh, 1,000%. Because the thing is, like, I come from the generation of Instagram. Like, Instagram came out when I think I was in like year 10 or like year 11. And so I grew up with that. I grew up with Snapchat. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a normal thing for me to be videoing yourself and posting it. So essentially, even before I was putting out like radio content, I was on my Instagram story just chatting crap on there all the time. And what is that? It's me in front of a camera, technically just presenting. So that kind of built up a lot of my confidence to do that, to be honest.
We kind of mentioned before about how you were saying about how, you know, when you were at KISS, I think your manager there was kind of saying, why wouldn't you still do your Represent stuff? Because that's, you know, part of your thing. And, you know, you still want to be involved in your various communities, and you get to kind of experiment on different stations and do different things on different stations and stuff. But do you think that some more traditionally like kind of established stations are drawing kind of inspirations, should we say, from the new kind of independent radio stations like No Signal, like Represent, like Foundation FM. Do you think that those kind of independent radio stations are kind of changing the game a bit, and like all the big broadcasters are kind of having to sit up and say, oh, we need to be on it with creating of a, you know, like more relevant youth kind of content?
Yeah, that's always been the case though. Like, because if you look, the traditional way to get into radio is for you to be on student radio or community radio, and that's how you usually get scouted to then come on and kind of like bring what you've been doing on community radio onto a national brand. So that's kind of like the way that radio's always been. And yeah, I think it just makes a lot of sense, and that's why community radio is amazing, because you're always taught as well, like whenever you study radio, to kind of experiment on community radio or student radio, and then by the time you get to these big stations, you know what features work for you, you know what kind of vibe you've got. So I think that's always been the case. I don't think it's a new thing.
Okay, it's a good point. My next question is going to be about your inspiration, both generally. So who has generally kind of inspired you in terms of, they don't have to be, you know, obviously in radio, they could be just in your personal life or kind of in a different kind of industry or arena. And secondly, like who's specifically inspired you within the radio industry, who like really, have you been like, I want to kind of be like that, that's like the level I want to get to, you know, that kind of thing? I know you were a big fan of Trevor Nelson's show when you were growing up, weren't you? So perhaps that. But yeah, who's been your inspiration both in radio and generally?
So my inspiration in radio was always Trevor Nelson, of course, growing up, because I just think the way that he used to educate me on songs that were way before my time, whenever I listened to his show, I was just so captivated by it. And my mum was obsessed with Trevor Nelson, and I also loved as well like the way that we would listen to him on the radio, then my mum would go and see him whenever he would come to Birmingham and put on a show, but then she would also buy his CDs as well, and then I would have his CDs. So it's kind of like, I just loved the whole idea that Trevor Nelson was everywhere in my life growing up, like, because my mum just absolutely loved him and adored him. And for me, that just kind of showed how powerful radio is, because it took it past just being on One Extra or just on Radio 1. It was literally, my mum would go and watch him, would have his CDs, it would be just across the board. And it kind of just showed me the power of what radio can do as a starter, and how much more can be done off just radio. So that was definitely a big inspiration for me. And then outside of radio, Beyonce, I love that woman. Beyonce is like my absolute inspiration. And the reason why is because one thing about Beyonce is that she oversees everything. Like, anyone that didn't know much about Beyonce would think that she just steps on the stage, does the performance, and that's what it is. When it's not, she's so dedicated to every single part of everything that she does. Like, she oversees the costumes, the lighting, choreography, like the songwriting, across the board. She will sit in and oversee every single part, and no person works as hard as what she does to put on a show. And that's why, to me, she's the absolute best. So for me, as anyone that knows me as a presenter, like I don't have a producer. Like, even on Kiss and Hits, like I don't have a producer. I just do the show myself. So it's about being across the board. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn how to video edit, I'm going to learn how to audio edit, I'm going to learn how to produce, I'm going to script my own interviews, I'm going to produce my own shows, I'm going to be the presenter. And for me, I learned that from Beyonce. I learned to make sure that you are across the board, and even if you're not the one physically producing the show or physically editing it, make sure that you know what they're doing, make sure you've learnt what it is that they're doing, so then you can explain what it is you want done and why you want it changed and how you would like it to be. So that is just a big lesson that I learned from her, and also I just love her anyway.
Yeah, well, both of those are Trevor Nelson and Beyonce are living legends, obviously, so shout out to them. Yeah, and I think also what you're saying as well about having that oversight is that if you don't have the oversight and then you put something out and then you're not kind of happy with it, then that weighs on you. Like, even if nobody else criticises you for it, you know, you need sometimes having the oversight is good for then just feeling like, okay, this is what I wanted to achieve with this thing or so, you know. And like, also sometimes you can maybe it's like a confidence thing that I find, or like maybe, you know, being a woman, or sometimes I'm like, it's easy to think that other people might know best, and they make a decision on something, and then you might actually get criticism for something that was somebody else's decision, and you're like, I knew in my gut that that wasn't right, and I wanted it to be different, and I just didn't have the confidence to say so. So I absolutely love that you have got the oversight of all of the stuff that you do, and that's probably why it's all so good as well, isn't it?
Thank you. And the thing is as well, for me, it's kind of like, if you learn how to do everything, you can put out whatever content you want to put out. You haven't got to wait, because a lot of the time when I speak to up-and-coming presenters or just young people that are interested in content creation, they'll be like, so I've got this idea, but I'm waiting on this and I can't do this. And I'm just like, well, you can, because if you just learn how to do it, like, not being funny, on a phone, like, iMovie is free. So if you have an iPhone, you can actually create whatever it is you want to create, but you just have to learn. But YouTube is also free, so why don't you go onto YouTube and teach yourself how to do stuff? So then you can just put whatever it is that you want to put out. There's not one piece of content now that I can't just put out myself, because I can just do it myself. And don't get me wrong, like, obviously if I paid for a video producer or I paid for someone to film it, the quality would be better. But what I also know is, one, if I never had the money, or two, if everyone's busy, or three, I just can't find someone to do it, like, it doesn't matter, I can do it myself. So I just think it's so vital for anyone that wants to be a presenter or a content creator to just learn how to edit and learn how to produce yourself.
Yeah, and you're only relying on yourself then, aren't you? So we finish every Radio.co episode with the last 3 questions, and I'll give you them all 3 in one, and then you can go through and answer each one. So the first question is, what are the things that have changed in the radio industry that you wish was still the same? The second question is, what changes have happened in the radio industry that you're absolutely thrilled about? And the third question is there anything still happening in radio that you wish would hurry up and die?
I wish that the listenership stayed the same. Because I think that the radio legends that we absolutely know and love, it's very hard now to become like a radio legend and a household name by just doing radio. Whereas before, like, it'd be the thing, like, radio was the thing. So I do in my soul, like, wish that radio still carried the same weight as what it used to carry. And because I'm in such a radio bubble, like, I kind of ignore that, and I'm just like, oh yeah, radio is so amazing. But I can't ignore the fact that if I do speak to, let's say, my little brother and his friends, that they just won't really care. So I wish that changed. The changes that has happened, which I'm thrilled about, is the diversity in radio. Like, we still have a long way to go. However, like, the diversity of radio at the moment is absolutely, like, heading in the right direction, behind the mic and in front of the mic. So that is something that I'm loving. Even, like, the different kind of content that's being put out, and also even with podcasting as well. Like, there's so much niche content out there which is so diverse that's being put out, which is absolutely incredible. So that's something that I'm thrilled about. And the final question is something that I wish would change, and that would be all of the free work that is happening in radio. I think the one thing about radio is that because people that want to be a presenter or want to be a producer, they're so desperate for it because it's such a competitive industry and we all want it so bad, is that sometimes we're completely taken advantage of, and we would work for free left, right, centre. I've done it. Everyone else that I know in radio has done it. But it wouldn't happen in any other industry the way it happens in this industry. So that is something that I just want to change. And honestly, it will just help diversify the industry as well, because let's be honest, not everyone has the money to just volunteer 3 days a week. Like, a lot of people don't have the money, and stats already show that, like, in terms of being from a low income background, a lot of that is ethnic minority households. So at the end of the day, if we want to diverse the industry, one thing that we need to tackle the most is the free work, and for it to be accessible to people. And when I say diversify, again, it's not just about bringing in ethnic minorities. It is also like white people from low income backgrounds as well. They should be allowed to have the opportunity to enter this industry. So I just know myself, me personally, if it wasn't for the fact that I had a scholarship, there's no way on earth that I'd be working in radio, because of, I just wouldn't be able to afford it. Like, because university loans, to live in London of £13,000 a year is like, it's basically unlivable. You have to also work. Because I had a scholarship, I could leave working at Tesco and I could volunteer at radio instead. But if I didn't have a scholarship, I wouldn't be working in radio right now, because my mum didn't have the money to send to me. So I just think that is something that needs to change. It's starting to change, but we're just not where it needs to be. And whether that just starts with the government giving more funding to community radio stations so people could be paid to do their show, or people can be paid internships. And the bigger stations, I know a lot of stations have signed up to basically say that they won't take on anyone, they won't bring anyone in for free work. But that does also mean that a lot of them now aren't offering work experience or internships, because they've realised that they have to pay people. So it's like, no, we still want you to do internships, we still want you to do work experience, but just pay people to do them.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's what I would love to change about the industry.
Yeah, they're three solid answers, to be fair, and I definitely agree with you on all of those. Well, Kaylee, thank you so much for being on our podcast. We really appreciate it, and it was so insightful to have you on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So for our listeners that don't listen to you already, where can they tune in and hear you?
So, get ready for the list in the notepad.
I know, the scroll.
So, Monday to Friday, 2 until 7, you can hear me on Hits Radio Pride. That's on DAB across the country, but also online as well. Then Saturdays and Sundays, 1 until 4, you can hear me on Kiss Fresh. That's on your TV, on your smart speaker, or online. And then you can hear me every other Friday, 10 until 12 on Represent. So that's on DAB and FM across London. But if you're not in London, you can listen on the app or online as well. And follow me at Kaylee Golding on Instagram as well.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Radio.co. If you enjoyed the conversation today, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Radio.co is produced by Radio.co, the platform that can bring your radio station to life. Head to radio.co/demo today to get started. We'll be back soon.